to do a McRib endorsement.
They should get Weird Al to do a McRib endorsement. That'd be awesome. And hello, everyone, and welcome to the spoiler room. Here we are. It's a new month and a new theme. I'm probably not going to do a theme every month next year, but this year it's been fun. And
Do
this
it.
year is,
Do it.
I
love your themes.
Full force month here in the spoiler room. We've put Hot Van Dam month behind us. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Those were fun episodes. But yes, we are in full force, which means we're looking at movies this month with the word force in the title. Why? Because I really wanted to talk about Mega Force, a film that I think has 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And speaking of Rotten Tomatoes, we have a Rotten Tomato critic in our house here. He is back with us as always.
Don't
my right-hand man and co-host. That's what we call a segue in the business, Mr. Ian Simmons.
The business, yeah.
How you doing, sir?
I'm feeling lucky, punk. I mean,
you're feeling lucky,
Mark. I'm feeling lucky.
And we have a couple of viewers already. Thank you for joining us live for what's going to be probably a very spirited discussion for our full force month. We're looking at Magnum Force, the second film in the Dirty Harry franchise, which I'm sure when they did Dirty Harry, they didn't think that was going to be a franchise per se, but and we've got yes, one and only Clint Eastwood back with us as Dirty Harry. And Mr. Ian Simmons, as always, you do such a good job, sir. Please, synopsis for Magnum Force.
Well, I just want to start out by saying I was disappointed because I saw the title and I'm looking at the comments. Is this the one with the topless Suzanne Summers?
Is this the one with the...
I'm not sure. Was she one of the people in the pool?
I'm not sure, but there was a few topless ladies in the pool at the time. I'm not sure who our Facebook viewer is because
asking those hard-hitting questions, I can see why they wanted to remain anonymous.
That's a hard-hitting question. I don't think that was naked Suzanne Summers. It is naked.
Yes, she's in the pool.
Oh, actually, yes, she is. That is a naked
rewind
Suzanne.
And pause.
Rewind and pause.
Okay, so Mark, let's pause and we'll actually go and scrub through. I still have my Amazon rental. No.
Thank you very much, Facebook user. Rewind and pause. Good suggestion, because that is a topless Suzanne Summers in the pool. There's a bunch of other familiar faces in this film as well.
Of course.
Mr.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that makes a lot more sense.
Don, okay. Mr. Don Shanahan. Don, you and I have excellent tastes. We have similar tastes. We run in like the same lane. Appreciate you tuning in for us, sir, and mentioning that little bit of trivia that it is a topless Suzanne Summers who gets taken out by a machine gun wielding cop.
Well, okay, let me just say, first of all, I'm disappointed, Don, that you outed yourself. I was just going to start calling you Rewind and Pause. Oh, my God. What is Don drinking tonight?
I don't know what that is, but I'm drinking some hard root beer. And
I'm going to synopsize this movie.
Go for it. But
I'm going to start by saying how disappointed I was. I thought Magnum Force was about a bunch of people who were trying to sell oversized condoms. And, it just didn't work out that way. It was a Dirty Harry sequel.
It was a Dirty Harry sequel, but not that Harry dirty. It's Dirty Harry. Anyway.
I didn't know what that icon was for a second. And,
that's why I only left it up there for a second.
I know. I think it's a tongue, but I was thinking about camels. Anyway.
Wow. Synopsis of Magnum Force. Go, Ian.
Now, I'm going to, it is the spoiler room, but I'm glad that I did not look at the IMDb synopsis beforehand because it totally takes the mystery out of this film. And I'm being sincere about this. I loved Magnum Force way more than I thought I would. Because when I didn't realize it was the first sequel to Dirty Harry, because they did a million of these movies and I haven't seen a bunch of them. I've only seen the first one once years ago. But essentially, Harry Callahan, this detective in San Francisco, it's a hard-hitting Clint Eastwood. He's a big fan of the 357 Magnum or whatever. He's essentially a vigilante cop. He'll do what the law won't, he'll do what the law won't. I'll just stop
Yeah.
it there. But according to IMDb, he's on the trail of a group of vigilante police officers who are doing murders around the city. That's a mystery that is revealed later on in the film, right?
Yeah, I was surprised the synopsis on IMDb. Well, no, not really surprised, because IMDb does that fairly a lot, especially with the older films. They just write the plot right there. You're just like, oh, well, way to go. But I didn't realize you weren't familiar with this film before you went into it. So,
had you seen this before?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. Are you a big dirty? Are you a bigger dirty? Are you a big dirty Harry fan? I should drink some.
What do you got in
beer.
your coffee?
Just coffee.
Sure.
At a 4 a.m. wake up time.
Yeah. No. I wouldn't say big fan. My dad was into the action crime dramas. Yeah. And so we watched them a lot when I was a kid. And so, and you ended up watching Dirty Harry films. And actually, my first Dirty Harry film was Sudden Impact. Obviously, it was 1984. It's like the big return. And I'm like, why is this such a big deal? I mean, it was a fun movie. It was a good movie. But at the same time, and we've talked about it on the spoiler room, but I'm like, why is this such a big deal? And then I realized it was like, we didn't have internets. So I actually had to I looked in, a movie book, and it said, oh yeah, well, this is the third film or whatever, or fourth film. There were two other. I'm like, what? Dirty Harry? There were 3 other films before this. And then I watched those, and I really dug them. So no, I've watched this one quite a bit over the years.
I too love the euphemism titles, Don. Magnum Force, Sudden Impact, Dirty Harry. It was the Deadpool. Yeah, that's
Deadpool.
that's more into like the necrophilic area. We don't need to touch that. But yeah, so the thing is, like, there are these murders happening. It kind of starts off where there's this guy who's like a mobster getting off scot-free. Oh my God. Anyway, you should put all these comments up there. Just like scroll them along.
I just need to
In fact, just
them.
send Don the link. Have him get on here. He's probably drunk and grading papers or something. But no. But that's the thing is, it's a mystery. Who is knocking off these people who are, they're clearly guilty, but they're, the law is letting them off scot-free. There's protesters out saying the law doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work for the little guy. Everyone's corrupt. So like you see this patrolman kind of coming up on this mobster's limo, and the limo pulls off to the side, and the guy says, let me see your license and registration. The driver's like, do you know who this guy is? The cop goes to his bike and comes back and just like blows everybody away. And there's this really unnerving, prolonged death twitch.
Oh my God, the death twitch. Yeah.
But the thing I liked about it is morbid as it is, like the way that those bodies fell on each other seemed very natural, and there's an authenticity to that. Like the one lawyer is slumped over his boss, and his boss is just like slowly
twitching.
Dying. Yeah, and it's almost like, oh, you think maybe this is going to play out like he's not really dead, and he's going to wake up in the hospital and say, I didn't see who came to get me. But no, he's just dying. And we get a few of those. There's a scene where a prostitute in the back of a cab gets liquid Drano poured down her throat. A lot of it is implied because it's shot so weird. I had to go back and watch because I'm like, is that what I think? Oh my God, that is. And then the pimp who does that to her gets the comeuppance. But yeah, you realize that it's not just one person, not just one vigilante out for, justice. It's actually 4 rookie cops that befriend and idolize Harry Callahan. And what I was surprised to see in this movie is this is the kind of film that I think would be like number 3 or 4, because it's kind of like the Batman or the Dark Knight, which I guess is blowing my theory away because that was the second movie in Nolan's trilogy. Yeah. But it's the whole idea of like, you've got this vigilante setting the tone of like going out and doing this stuff outside the law, but still doing it for justice. What does that do to people who take that on as a mantle, as a calling? And you get these 4 maniacs out there doing this, even though they come across as like law-abiding, good, clean-cut kids played by Tim Matheson, David Soul, and oh my God, who is the other one?
Ehrlich.
Oh, Robert Urich, yeah.
Urich, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was the 4th guy, I don't know who he was, but he looked like someone else, but it wasn't who I thought it was. Um, but yeah, so, like, these fantastic little cameos who at the time, they're just like, just these young actors in their early 20s who would go on to, like, do these crazy things.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I really like this movie. There's a scene in a parking garage later on where Harry actually confronts the 3 remaining, crooked cops, and they're laying out their philosophy, and he's like, "I can't get on board with that." And instead of them just, like, killing him, they're like, "All right, just stay out of our way," and they just kinda drive off. It's unexpected.
Yeah, it is unexpected with this, especially for this being where it's at. I mean, because this is a series. This really feels like it would be later in a series because Callahan in this, yeah, you establish it in Dirty Harry how he is, but that was just a movie prior. And here he is like kind of, Bruce Willis in the third Die Hard film, or Indiana Jones in Last Crusade. You've established him of how he is with his one-liners in that. They just drop him right into that role like right away. Like he's the badass. Like he randomly thwarts a terrorist takeover of a plane because he happens to be in the airport and he sees these guys talking, and he's he doesn't do things by the book, but at his core, Harry Callahan is a good guy. He wants to save people. He wants to help innocent people. He hates scumbags. So he happens across this conversation in the airport, and his buddy behind, because he knows everybody, the buddy behind the airport bar counter says, "Oh yeah, that's a signal that there's something going on. There's something wrong in the airport." So Callahan just walks into a group and he's just like, "I'm a detective." And like, "Well, you got any ideas?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he poses
like, you got
as
a
a
uniform?
pilot. You got a pilot's uniform. And so a homicide detective, sneaks aboard a plane, beats the crap out of one guy, blows another guy away with his Magnum through the wall of inside the plane.
Here's the question: where did he get this gun from? Because he got patted down and everything.
I
Is that a hole? Did we find a flaw in this? Because that was, or did he have?
No, he grabbed it from the guy. He
Oh,
grabbed
that's
it
right.
from the
Okay,
guy.
it
The
wasn't
guy
his gun.
had a big, yeah, it was the terrorist gun.
Yeah, that's right. But here's the thing I love about this: every time this movie starts to get ridiculous, it only lasts for like a half second. Because when Harry Callahan says, "You got any uniforms?" the next shot is the door opening up, and he's kind of peeking his head out, and he's wearing the captain's outfit, and like, what is this Bugs Bunny shit? But then he gets onto the plane, and the one terrorist, there's only 2 guys. The one terrorist, pats him down and inspects the satchel that he's brought on board with him. And then just like takes him into the cockpit, and he's got a gun to his head. And it's like, okay, really, how's Harry Callahan going to get out of this situation? He has no weapons. I don't think he knows how to fly a plane.
Which he doesn't,
He doesn't. The co-pilot, like helps him like start to taxi down the runway, and they're just flying, or they're getting ready to fly. And you can just see Harry like working this out, like, yep, I'm in this situation. I'll figure something out. I hope quickly. But there's that tension. It's not like modern action movies where it would turn out that, oh yeah, he's also secretly a pilot, or he's smuggled, another gun up his asshole or something. He's going to like just turn into an action star. It feels very realistic in a completely ridiculous situation.
Yeah, at one point you get just a slight brief glimpse, like, Callahan realizes he may be in over his head as he's piloting the plane down the runway with the guy with the gun at the back of his head. You can even see it in Callahan's eyes. He's like, maybe I didn't think this through all the way. And the acting from the co-pilot's awesome because he's just staring at him and he's like trying not to say, are you gonna do something? And you don't mind me asking, Captain, do you know how to fly a plane? No.
Yeah, and that he uses that as his chance. But yeah, that look, because it's also the look of, I don't recognize you.
Yeah,
you don't work at this airport.
Yeah, when he shows up and he sits down, the co-pilot's like, I I don't know you, but he doesn't say anything either. You know, mad props to him. You're right. I mean, you know, for a film that's you know from 1973, I loved the screenplay. This easily, you know, could still fit in today. It was a story written and a screenplay written by John Millis, who gave us Conan.
Mm-hmm.
For crying out loud, and Apocalypse Now, right? He's writing a Dirty Harry film, and it's wonderful.
Well, that's the thing is like, and again, I haven't seen all the Dirty Harry movies, but I feel like this is still in the time when Dirty Harry movies were serious films.
Still, yeah, they were still taken as serious crime dramas.
Right.
You know.
The first one is it's kind of like the Death Wish movies. They get
Mhm.
gradually more,
Yeah.
ridiculous as they go along. And again, I'm ascribing something to what I've heard about the Dirty Harry movies more than what I've experienced. I would actually love to do a whole Dirty Harry series.
They don't
but-
get as ridiculous, but he gets more plot armor as he goes on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know.
And the cool thing about this movie is Dirty Harry is a badass. He's fearless, but he's not invincible. And he doesn't have all of the answers. He's got some great instincts, which help him out in terms of like the bomb in the mailbox.
Yeah.
You know, he's and there's the perfect chance for some comedy there. You've got the nosy neighbor who's like, "Hey, why are you taking apart the mailbox?" And he's like, you know, mind your own business. Like, are you the cop that lives upstairs? And all of this stuff. But when he realizes that his partner probably also got a mail bomb and he's calling again, I think a modern action movie, you'd have Harry like slam down the phone in frustration, burst out the door and start like running to try and save his friend. But
or
he's
hop into
like,
his car, hop into his car and drive mad, you know.
Right. But he also realizes that there's probably a good chance that I'm too late. So I'm just going to call my boss and say, can you get somebody over to his house?
Yeah. And his partner is played by Felton Perry, who most people may recognize as Johnson in RoboCop films. But he's been in a lot of stuff. It was great to see him in a role like this. You know, and unfortunately he is Dirty Harry's partner. So the likelihood of him surviving till the end, you realize is minuscule, you know, or making it to the end one way or the other. In fact, they make a joke about it with his partners. But I loved his role in it. It was a shame to see the bomb go off, but it was a great tension-filled moment. What's even more, though, is the bomb scene happens when you talk about instincts right after he talks to the cop guys. So he talks to the cop guys. He confronts them. He comes around to his mailbox, and it's like, he immediately suspects something. It's like while they're there, he's like thinking. It was kind of cool because he's almost thinking like them. He's like, they were just here, they had a long enough time, and then he just kind of peeks in his mailbox and he's like, oh,
right. Well, because he knows that even though they can't see eye to eye and they didn't try and kill him in that parking lot, they know who they always knew who he was, but now they know that they are going to be at odds with each other, so no place is safe. I love that Sunny, the cute girl upstairs, they sleep together and everything, but they actually have sort of a relationship blossoming. But she doesn't end up being taken hostage. She doesn't figure into the greater story. It all just comes down to Harry versus these perps and the secret bad guy running it all. You know, in one sense, I was disappointed that Hal Holbrook, the Lieutenant Briggs, turned out to be, in league with these guys.
Right.
But in another sense, I do kind of like that because he's actually recruiting these young people, who feel this kind of way about law enforcement and taking that into their own hands. And that just opens up a door in my head. Like, what if he had, actually killed Harry Callahan, was able to just recruit this army of like insider, people. And I just also love Hal Holbrook. He's not just the typical beleaguered, police lieutenant. He actually gives as good as he gets throughout the movie.
He rides Callahan throughout this entire film. He's not one of those guys that kind of backs off after a while. Oh, Callahan did this. Oh, good, you saved the plane. No, he's still riding this guy all the way through the film. whether or not regardless of whether or not he would have turned bad at the end, I like that about Hal Holbrook as well. I mean, and he's a great character, you know, in this, and he adds a lot. And I kind of suspected he was the one. They kind of throw out a few of those telltale signs with him, but still, it was fun to see him in kind of that heavy role, for Hal.
Well,
Uh,
I kept thinking while I was watching this, I would love to have seen this movie in 1973 because
oh
I don't
God, yeah.
know how, for lack of a better term, I don't know how sophisticated audiences were when it came to this kind of movie back
Mhm.
then. I don't know if all the stuff that happened in Magnum Force was already cliche at this point, or if it was something that, people would just go on to rip off over the
Right.
ensuing decades. Because even watching it now, I've seen a lot of these beats, but it feels so fresh and vital, and is presented in such a smart way that it feels like I was watching the birth of something.
Yeah, there was really not a whole lot I had a problems with it. I mean, I'm watching it, I'm like, "This is a solid film." I'm, like, into it. I'm like, "I've watched this many times, and I still get into it because of the way it is." And, just for a short time, you also wonder they've got this sub-story going on with, Harry's old partner, Charlie, who's kind of, the tension and the stress, basically early addressing some post-traumatic stress syndrome with an individual, though they don't call it that. He's been on the force too long, and, yeah, there's, his wife, who Harry's still friends with, hits on Harry because, you know, Harry, and now we're talking Clint Eastwood, we're talking 73. You're in my age, okay? And everybody in this film, all the ladies really want a piece of Harry Callahan.
Well, but that's the thing too, is that, you know, modern movies, and I
Mhm.
hate to keep going back to this, but you've got these guys who are in their, 40s or 50s or even 60s, but all their female co-stars are like 25,
Well, yeah.
right? In this movie, the Sunny, the neighbor character, she's probably in her 20s, and so
Mhm.
yeah, it's a bit of a get. But also, they have Charlie's wife or
Ex-wife.
estranged wife,
It's
ex-wife.
yeah.
She's closer to Harry's age, but she's that doesn't mean that she doesn't have desires and and can't be attractive and kind of alluring too. And also, they drop her character, like
Yeah.
she's in and she's out of the movie. But I don't have a problem with that
Mhm.
because again, it feels like something that this is just a detail in Harry's life. Harry Callahan's life is not consumed with things that just drive the plot forward.
Mhm.
Even when there are things that just drive the plot forward, they do it so in subtle ways. Like the whole gun range competition thing
Oh,
comes out of
yeah.
nowhere. It's just like, hey, it's the weekend, we're off duty, we're going to go to this competition in the gun range or whatever, where they have to shoot all the targets and stuff. And
Mhm.
then David Soul, who's one of the rookie cops, he actually bests Harry, but it's not at the point, and maybe I'm just like naive, or I was so invested in the movie I didn't want to think about it.
Mhm.
I wasn't thinking that this was a sign that he was one of the bad guys. I was thinking more that Harry was going to use these kids to become part of his Magnum Force. Like the Magnum Force in the movie are the bad guys,
Right.
but I thought like they were gonna have to go up against this like ultimate
Mhm.
evil cop, and he was gonna like mow through all these kids or something. It's gonna come down to him versus Harry or something.
And that's the thing is the reason I brought up the Charlie character before too is because they do play fairly well at the idea that maybe Charlie is the cop, the rogue cop going off the rails and killing these people. Because the way the director Ted Post, the way he directs these sequences initially with the cop, you're never giving a really full picture of what this cop looks like. You get bits and pieces and things, and it could be any of the cops.
Well, and that's one of the things that is kind of disappointing, especially with IMDb, that they reveal that it's multiple people,
Right.
because the filmmaking in this movie is really solid,
Hmm.
because they do like a serious version of the Austin Powers, genital obfuscation. Like when
Yes.
the cops, when they don't want you to know who the cop is, they hide, the camera is perched behind, like, at the bottom of a stairwell, so when the cop is coming down, his face is obscured by the railing, but
Mhm.
only his face, you can see everything else, and, like, there's mirrors and all sorts of stuff. It's masterful.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they pulled this off, because it's not like just, "Hey, it's dirty hair, he's just gonna go around shooting people." No, there's real artistry in this movie. You can tell that people cared about putting something together.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're making a real film, and they really are putting some care in this craft that easily could have just been a basic, straightforward, like, gritty crime thing where Harry's just blowing everybody away, which, that's another thing too with this character is you get a more human side to your, he Clint Eastwood's characterized as the hardened, the rough, leathery, tough guy with no emotions. And even Callahan later on is kind of pictured as this kind of superhero-esque, I will say, super cop type of thing where he's just the hard-nosed, hard-boiled, cop. He cleans his guns when he gets home, when I but here we even get a portrait of Harry. Just he comes home and his neighbor, turns out his neighbor's been macking, been jonesing for him for a while or whatnot, and they, like you said, they start a relationship of sorts. We see how he just, he comes home, he grabs a beer and burger, and he doesn't want the burger, and then she shows up, and it's like, and what was interesting with that story too, that part of the story too, was she showed up because he said all you got to do is knock, because she asks him what's the girl got to do to get a cop like you, get into bed with you, and he's like, just knock. And so she comes up and she knocks, which is a great little bit of humor to it, because you know what's going to happen.
Well, that's the thing, though, is, again, in lesser movies with this type of a character, you got it a little bit wrong, because he didn't just say you just got to knock. She says, "What's a girl have to do to go to bed with you?"
That's right.
And he says, "Try knocking on the door."
That's right. Yeah.
He says it as a question.
Yeah.
It's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's also kind of like, I don't know. I'm doing my
Yeah.
thing. If you want to come up and have some fun, but it's not like he seduces her as like, "Yeah, come
No.
see me sometime." It's like, because I don't remember much about the first movie, but in his apartment there is that photo of him with a woman. I assume that's
Right.
his
Yeah.
ex-wife, dead wife. I don't
I
know what the deal is.
trying to remember the first one, but no, he had something. I think he lost his wife in the first one, or he was a widow even then. I forgot how that played out. It was far more serious. This film is heavy, but at the same time, there is a little bit more humor, I think, worked in here than in the first one, the Dirty Harry one. It's been a while since I watched the first one, actually, because that one's is a bit more intense, dealing with the serial killer and all that.
Oh yeah, played by Hellraiser's Andrew Robinson.
Yeah,
Yeah, very well done.
that one's it's a more of an intense watch. This one is still good, but this one's leaning more into your earlier like action fare, to where you have serious parts, but it's not as heavy. I mean, this film has dramatic parts, but it never gets like that heavy or serious or scary like Night Hawks, or something along that line. You know what I mean, though? I mean, the subject matter. I mean, we've got vigilantes killing bad guys, so you don't feel too bad about the people getting offed, in all honesty, because they're offing bad guys. You feel bad for the civilian folks who are hanging out with the bad guys, but at the same time, they're often bad guys. So it's not like the serial killers going out killing innocents necessarily.
Yeah.
So you don't quite have as heavy of a level with what the act of your villains are doing. It's still wrong, but I think that really helps with the tone, to where you're like, these guys are bad, but you're allowed to enjoy the film a little more, versus say a guy, slaughtering people, brutally innocent folks. So I
Yeah,
think that helps with the tone too.
yeah, it does. But there's also, I'm not saying that the filmmakers had another side to that, but
Mhm.
these aren't like cool deaths. They're
No,
much
no,
like the
they're
monsters in that limo in the first one. They're kind of hard to watch.
yeah.
The pimp who gets blown away on the side of the road and
Mhm.
everything. Yeah, he did some monstrous things to that prostitute, who, as another little kind of a beautiful red herring. she gets into that cab and you think you're gonna follow her. She's kind of getting into some little banter with the cab
With the
driver.
cab driver.
Yeah, the cab driver.
Mhm.
And then, the cab driver stops and the pimp jumps into the car. And then you think it's kind of like a comedy thing because the cab
Mhm.
driver's all nervous, like, well, what's going on here? And the pimp's like, being kind of cartoonishly pimpish. But then things go really south. And he
Yeah.
starts kind of roughing her up. And then there's another little bit of comedy where the cab driver stops and he hightails it out of the car. He just
He
runs
just
away.
bolts. Yeah.
I was like waiting for the Benny Hill song to start playing or something. But then we go back to the cab and like, oh
Pouring
my
Drano
God.
down her. Yeah.
And then her hand kind of falls,
Mhm.
limp. That's what we see of her. And then in the next scene, when the pimp gets shot, again, it's like this weird symmetry. His hand
Hand
falls out
falls limp.
the limp, but it's painful. These people get like shot in all different kinds of places, and it
Yeah.
looks like real like gangland slaying photos.
Yeah, I loved that bit to where they got his arm to fall very similar to the prostitute's arm. And again, it's the little bits like that throughout this film that you're like, you know, it adds that little bit of extra. It's just that little bit of extra interesting touches that you throw into this film with that, giving Harry, so where you find out he's a norm when he gets home, he's actually kind of a normal guy. He's not, yeah, he's a hard-boiled, detective, but yeah, he's when he gets home, he's just the same guy eating leftovers and drinking a beer. And even still, where I was going with the Sunny scene, what surprised me with that scene was that she shows up and you think, okay, maybe something's going to start. He gets a call to go check out a body. So you would think, okay, that's end. I guess their date nights end. He comes back after that and she's in his apartment still. And I'm like, I did not expect that in a good way though. I like that because in a lot of movies similar to this, that would be it. You wouldn't see her either anymore for that scene, or she went back to her place or whatnot. So the fact that he comes back and she's still there, you're just like, oh, okay, she really wants to, see Harry Callahan's 357 Magnum. Wild Man Beyond, who's joined us as well. Thank you for joining us. He says, we need movies and heroes like Dirty Harry again. Fuck superheroes. Um, you know, bluntly put, but yeah, it, and that's the one thing too. We've talked about Die Hard and where that was kind of the changed your action hero. And they've kind of alluded to it, but it's never, I don't think, quite gotten to the level of like some of these early 70s. Even when we talked about Death Wish, which came out just a year later after this one, in a similar way, is these are just guys. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
they're guys who are hard boiled, who, yeah, on the job, they're, well, not in the case of our Death Wish guy. I mean, when he's on the job, he's designing buildings and then he's killing, people on his off time. But still, I mean, they're guys though. They're people. They're not guys who are constantly working out when they get home or constantly cleaning their guns. Or, Dirty Harry he doesn't have like a huge gun rack at home or whatnot. He's got his gun,
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest analogy was, a couple decades later with Michael Douglas and Falling Down.
Mhm.
He just had a really bad day, and then he went on this rampage. But I mean, that's the thing is like I kind of agree with you, Wild Man Beyond. It's going to be a long time before we see anything resembling this kind of movie today, because of, you want to call it political correctness or wokeness or whatever. I mean, it's some of the stuff in Dirty Harry and in Magnum Force, it's shocking to hear.
There is some shocking stuff to hear, but
The language, the brutality, frankly, the nudity, you don't get a whole lot of that in movies anymore. It's just kind of a weird time. Especially weird. This is kind of out of context, but there's a lot of talk in this film about corrupt cops and fuck the
yeah.
police and all this other stuff, which there's echoes of that certainly today. But there's one line of dialogue that I think a cop says, I'll never forget the Floyd case. Like,
Yeah,
holy
right.
shit.
Right? It's just like, whoa.
Where are we?
Okay,
Yeah.
when was this made? Huh? You know, and yeah, some of the dialogue in that, I mean, it is dated, so it is going to shock you and ruffle some feathers. They make some comments about queers in the force, which actually Harry Callahan kind of plays off in that.
Well, I think we should just make sure we correct the record. That's a phrase that's used in the movie, and that's not like
Yes,
Mark saying,
that's
"Yeah,
not, no.
they were talking about all the queers in the
No,
force."
I don't use the term.
Yes.
That's the quote that they used, is they referred to them as queers, that they thought they were queer for each other, these four guys who are stuck together, to which Carrie Callahan
Nice
said
choice of words.
to which Harry Callahan says is that if everybody in the department shoots like they shoot, I don't care if they're queer.
What I loved is that there's this it's like almost like something out of Airplane, because they're saying that as they're entering a building and another cop is walking
Yeah.
out, and the other cop catches the very end of that, and he just kind of stops for a second like, "What the
What the
fuck?"
what are you guys talking about? I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's very dated. They use that term in the film. I don't not use that term. I want to go on right,
Yeah,
but
it's
that is the quote they use in it. But it's interesting to see that, even, how Callahan kind of has a different perspective than some of the other cops on the force as well, without getting too heavy or too woke or whatever. But I mean, it's still, Callahan's just like, I don't care. These guys freaking shoot awesome. He's like,
well, he's also very even tempered in that way, because he's sort of the champion, going back to that, shooting obstacle course
Mhm,
scene. He's sort of known as the reigning champ, and then this like 25-year-old kid
mhm.
comes and like totally upstages him. He's just like, well, yeah, you shot better than me. Congratulations.
See, and we'll get to that in a minute. I want to get Wild Man Beyond also commented, said it would have been awesome if there was a Dirty Harry Death Wish crossover. I was having that exact same thought when I was watching it. Eastwood and Bronson together would have been badass. They were the Schwarzenegger and Stallone of the 70s. Yeah, I'm totally, when I was watching this, I'm like, this could easily be within Death Wish world. And I
I'm
could,
going to be the contrarian here.
yeah,
I think that would be a terrible idea,
no.
because I think that would have destroyed movies. Like, that amount of awesomeness on the screen, I think would have just like kind of like the arc beams from Raiders, just like
Yeah,
taking out the Nazis in a line. That would have just been all movie theaters all over the place.
your screen can't handle that magnitude of badassery.
Oh my god, yeah.
That would
They
have
should do a comic book about that.
that
Like,
would be an awesome comic book. Callahan hunting down a vigilante who happens to be our man from Death Wish. Wow.
holy crap.
There's your film right there, folks. I'm liking that idea. But yeah, no, it crossed my mind too that it would have been interesting to see these two characters cross paths for
Some of
sure.
those Death Wish movies took place in California. So maybe maybe they, because was it the second one? I know they didn't catch the perps who took out Bronson's family in the first one. That was New
No, they
York.
did. Yeah.
But yeah, I think they might have gotten the perps from the second one. I think they did. We
Yeah.
talked so many of these movies, but yeah, like if Charles Bronson moves to San Francisco with his new girlfriend and she gets attacked and murdered, and he goes out on a quest to find them, and so does Harry Callahan.
Callahan.
Oh my god.
And then the two, they meet up, and at first they confront each other, but then they realize they have their common enemy, which is the head of the gang who's been running this crime organization, and then they both team up next
And
to
both
each
their
other.
moms are named Martha.
And but no, fuck you.
Sorry. That
Fuck you.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Where you could take that. Destroy movies in a good way. He meant Wild Man Beyond. Like there would
Yes.
just be too much awesomeness on the screen that any movie afterward would just pale in comparison to.
Yes, let the record show. I think that Death Wish, well, the biggest problem is it Death Wish Dirty Harry, or is it Dirty Harry Death Wish?
Ooh,
Well, that sound no, it's gotta be Death
no.
Wish Dirty Harry because Dirty Harry Death Wish, when you just say it, it sounds like something you pay extra for on the street.
That'd be an awesome idea. I like that idea. Uh, the whole sequence with one thing I'm going to say is, and this is the way I actually took it for the sequence with the championship, is because earlier you get the scene where Harry meets the four guys at the shooting range, because Harry's going to go do his meditation of shooting his 357 Magnum at some targets, but his zen gets ruined by these four rookies who are taking up his spot on the shooting range, and he sees them, and they're all really good too, and that's where they mention the championship, because he's the reigning champion, and that's where they get kind of the hero. Oh, you're Harry Callahan, and he's just kind of taken aback a little. He finds some amusement in it, but he actually appreciates the skill he recognizes amongst this group of guys. I think he threw the match. I think he threw the match on purpose because he suspected these guys from the beginning, and he didn't want to, but he had his gut instinct. I think he threw it so that it could set up for the tie that they had, because at the end, when he's doing the target range, he shot a good guy. He shot a good guy because the first guy has a perfect. They got to do a death match because it's tied between Callahan and Sweet, and it was Sweet. What was it, Sweet or David? I forgot which one it was. Davis.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they all kinda run together. I
Davies.
just knew him as MacGyver or yeah,
The,
not MacGyver.
the four guys. Yeah.
Who did Robert Urich play on TV?
He Grimes. So that's what. Yeah.
No, but,
And
like, on TV, who was he?
he played
Spencer for Hire, yeah, that's right.
Spencer for Hire. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Davis, that's what it was. David Soul playing Davis. He was the crazy guy, the crazy of the four. He's the one that has the perfect on the rant, on the range with the competition, because they had the tiebreaker. Callahan goes and does it, and you could tell Callahan could easily beat this guy. I mean, he's on the range, he's just like, bam, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy. No, you're a good guy, bad guy, bad guy. His final shot is a bad guy, is a good guy. And you got the one guy in your eyes going, he's a good guy. He shot a good guy. But then he talks to Davis. He's like, oh, I guess you won. He's like, can I see your gun? And then he shoots and he happens to miss one. And you're like, okay. Callahan comes back that night and takes the slug out of the wood where he purposely missed so he could try to match the bullet to see if it matched the killings that they had with these murders going on with this vigilantes. And I love that whole sequence because I legitimately think that Callahan threw the match just so he could get in that situation to where he could get the gun and shoot.
I agree with you. I would have to watch the movie again. I
Mhm.
don't know that he had necessarily figured anything out at the shooting range. I think he just found these rookie cops. I think by the time they got to that competition,
Right. Well,
and he was
by
paying
the yep.
attention to how good David Soul
Right.
was with that weapon, he was like, "Hey, wait a second. We're looking for suspects who are really good with giant guns. Maybe there's something to this." But I want to get that other comment up from
So
Wildman. I
did
didn't know
from
that.
also from Wild Man Beyond. So glad you could join us, dropping all kinds of interesting, juicy tidbits. Did you know that Eastwood was developing a Dirty Harry video game, but it wasn't finished? There is footage on YouTube. I did not know that he was developing a Dirty Harry video game, but I would definitely play that.
And the old company I used to work for making slot machines, we actually did a Dirty Harry slot machine a
Really?
long time ago.
Oh.
I don't think Eastwood was actually involved. I think the only reason he got the license because the CEO knew him. But yeah, I don't remember much about the game, but yeah.
But and things escalate, unfortunately. Like I said, his partner, who was also actually on his level, and he was a newer guy, but he wasn't a rookie partner either, a rookie cop. He was just new to paired with Callahan. This guy had some smarts too, and I loved their relationship wasn't exactly between these two like you might get between the new partner and that. He wasn't exactly straight laced, you know, which
Yeah,
was
I mean,
good.
it's a dynamic. Again, this is one of those things where I don't know if the the kind of the dim-witted, like the goofy partner, the goofy rookie who's paired with the grizzled hard-boiled cop. If that's a cliche that came in later, but it's not in this movie. Like they're cops with different levels of experience. You know, the one guy is kind of nervous because he's paired up with this guy who could be a maniac, but they're also kind of, friends. They like each other.
Yeah.
They're not, constantly bickering like, I want to get a transfer out of this crazy car. He's kind of into it. You get the feeling that he wants to learn, how to be more, learn some of Harry's, methods. One question I had, I'm very confused. Yeah. What was the deal with Early, the partner, being in that convenience store, like clerking or something, when Callahan goes in and shoots those people?
I'm not sure. I don't know if
Was he undercover?
He was undercover. I wasn't quite sure at first because I'm like, wait, is that Early? I think he was undercover. He may have been there because Callahan is the one, he gets tipped off and he shows up and the crime's already in progress. We don't see it, but what I'm guessing may have happened is Early was there. He saw what was going on and snuck in the back and put on an outfit or whatnot to pose as, because the gun was under the counter too. His gun was under the counter on a shelf. So it's not like, it was either a stakeout, like he may have gotten a tip, or I wasn't quite sure. Cause at first I was like, wait, is that Early? Cause you don't recognize him because he's in just like
a blue, like
the blue
scrubs or something. Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not quite sure why he was there. I think just, cop things. It's one of those things where he was there. I didn't really care that he was there.
I just like to think the idea he was moonlighting because the cop salary is kind of crap, and it's like, I can't even do my clerk night job without getting involved in police matters. God damn it.
Really good with big guns equals euphemisms for Ian's love life. Yeah.
Hey,
okay.
I think that's a better euphemism than the one you got, Mark. So I'll take it.
That's better than the one I got. And Wild Man, funny you should mention that. I'll put a link in there for you if you want. We did actually cover Cobra on our podcast for our Cannon Fodder episode a while back. Funny that you mentioned a Cobra because back in February we did that. So,
and unlike the government health insurance, our Cobra coverage is free.
Ooh, nice.
That's free, Mark.
That's thank you. Yeah, we did cover Cobra because as he said, you should do an episode on Cobra. Stallone's take on Dirty Harry, very underrated, and fans are still hungry for a sequel. He could still do it now. I mean, he did Rambo, so he could do a old Cobra. That would be kind of interesting.
Just call it Old Cobra.
Old Cobra. Long in the Fang. No, anyway.
Yeah.
But so we got Magnum Force, you got Dirty Harry. He's known for his 357 Magnum. And I think one of the most interesting things with this sequel, because he's known with his big gun, we get his final conflict with our bad guys. He doesn't use the big gun.
Yeah.
That blew me away in a good way. It surprised me because, here it is, a sequel. He, after Dirty Harry, I'm sure it did explode, his character. Oh, this is a great character. Hence why they're doing a sequel. And in your final battle, if you will, with the bad, corrupt cops, he doesn't use his big gun. He uses a car. And yes, dedicated shout out to Mr. Derek Carey. There's at least 3 shitty dummies in this film.
One of whom was a naked woman who fell out of a high rise. We didn't talk about this scene at all. One of the most bizarre and, dare I say, progressive villains, especially over the 70s, like this, mobster named Guzman, I think his name was. Yeah. You see him up in this high rise, and he's in bed with a naked blonde woman and a naked blonde guy. What?
that you're right about it being a bit progressive. I was like, huh. And I thought, maybe the one guy was hanging around, but no,
he was hanging around her, right? But
they're having a bit of a menage, and that it's just surprisingly progressive for what you're looking at for a Dirty Harry film of sorts, and it's not even that big. It's handled somewhat subtly. I mean, as far as what, that he's involved with the couple that's in his bed snorting coke, which I love. He makes a line of, "You better not spill any of it. It's 900 grams and $900 an ounce or something like that."
Yeah. But no, you're right. As far as the final confrontation, first I love that there's the 4 vigilante cops. One gets taken out sort of by accident in this botched, shootout at the docks with mobsters who get tipped off that the cops are coming, but they're going to be the dirty cops who are killing everyone. So it's sort of like a take on the suicide by cop model, because the cops show up to serve a warrant, but the mobsters all think that they're just out there to kill them. So they start shooting first, and it's a big, oh my God. Um, but yeah, so then the one guy gets karate chopped in the neck to death.
Oh my
Uh,
God. Whew.
the other guy, I think it was Robert Urich's character.
Mhm.
It's weird because you didn't get a big death scene from him, but then you wouldn't because he wasn't Robert Urich back then. He was just some
No.
actor. There's this prolonged cop chase to the docks, and then Harry gets like just far enough with his car around a corner that he can turn around and start going back, towards the enemy, the Han Solo maneuver, and he just fucking takes out this motorcycle. It is so, without being graphically gruesome, it's so violent looking, like, oh my God, that has to hurt.
Well, he's driving this, God, I love 70s cars. I love old cars with the steel frames and that, because Callahan's car is just beat the shit. Yet it drives enough for him to just battering ram this chicken chase with the cop, who of course loses, and you see the body flopping, it's flopping on the hood and everything. It's a shitty dummy, obviously, but still, it's like and you're just like, oh damn, they went there, so I'm like, I don't think he's getting up from that one, and then the other cops show up, and you're right, Callahan doesn't shoot the guy. He doesn't just knock him out. He fucking crushes his larynx with a continuous karate chops in a rather brutal. I'm like, whoa, Callahan.
And then when David Soul finds the body, like a couple minutes later, it's all like contorted and fucked up. It looks like a complicated makeup job, or it could just be the actor was really good at contorting his face, because you could tell he just died in agony.
It was brutal though. I mean, you don't think he doesn't just karate chop and take him out. He fucking kills the guy. It's like, and we got some other comments here. Not just old Cobra, King Cobra. There you go, King Cobra.
Never say die. Iron Eagle.
There you go. Oh boy. Look at that. We're
Don't
even
pretend that's
working
not your
Iron
jam.
Eagle reference into this episode. And then yes, it's not big. It's handled subtly. Yes, I know phrasing. Thank you very much for that school and phrasing that I should do. And then we get probably the most anticlimactic second last string boss kill, in that Callahan hops on a motorcycle, and they do this motorcycle check on this it looks like an old aircraft carrier, like a decommissioned one, because it's not blacktop where they take out, but or some kind of boat, because there's wood on deck. And
yeah,
they
I
drive.
couldn't quite tell where this was.
It's like between two boats or something. It was a little hard to tell, but Callahan gets chased by the motorcycle guy. He hops over a spacing between boats, and then he dumps his bike on top of him, and you're like, oh shit, Harry's in trouble. Then the other guy is coming way too fast. He flies past Harry Callahan, who's stuck under the bike, and flies off of a very high platform into the water. And you're like, oh. And then Callahan gets himself up and looks over the edge of the water, and the dude's dead. And I'm like, wait, I figured he'd be like splashing in the water or something, and then maybe drowned or something, that he was hit or caught on the bike or something. But the guy's just, I'm like, how high was that boat?
And again, goes back to, I wish I were in 1973, when we didn't have decades after this of like, because in that modern movies, if he'd gone over, you're right, he would have been splashing around. He maybe even would have taken his gun out and started like shooting at Harry from the water or something. Yeah. But no, this just like, it killed him. I think for as much as the action choreography, particularly the driving, the chase scenes, this movie is phenomenal. This semi-climax is a real letdown, because I had to rewind to figure out what the geography was with that, the two bikes
Yeah.
jumping over and Harry kind of like turning and taking a dive on his, because you don't get the sense that the fall was that high, because you can fall off of a high bridge and yeah, your
Mhm.
bones are crushed to powder on impact with the water, but this didn't look like it was that high.
No.
It looked like
I
he could have survived that and gone on swimming.
And what I think it is I think that sequence was maybe just a hair bit more ambitious than what they would have been able to technically do. Because I think what it was supposed to be implied is that he lands on his bike and into the water, because he's still on his bike as it goes over. So I could see him to where he, the bike hits the water and he hits it, but you can't exactly show that in 1973 properly. So maybe that was it, with his budget,
Hmm.
the budget they had. And that was the only like anticlimactic. That was the only part of this whole film that I was like, oh, okay, it's they were limited by things, and yeah, Wild Man's right. Man's got to know his limitations. So does a director. But yes, that's his catchphrase in this one: is a man's got to know his limitations. Which comes up with the final conflict with Hal Holbrook, which brings full circle the bomb. I loved that. I
That, first of all, thank God for Hal Holbrook, because you're right. If it had just been the end with David Soul like badly going over the water, because it almost doesn't make sense again with the geography, because during that whole car chase, because once Briggs, the Holbrook character, reveals himself to Harry, he's
Mhm.
got him at gunpoint in the car. They're driving. They're supposed to go to the station, but Holbrook's like, no, drive down the highway. He's like, where are we going? He's like, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, there's an extended chase scene. Callahan gets the better of Briggs, smashes his head into the dashboard repeatedly, knocks him out. During this car chase with the motorcycle cop, there's a giant dramatic swerve. The passenger door opens and Hal Holbrook rolls out into the cement. But you don't know exactly where this is.
Right.
And I'm not even convinced that Holbrook's character, Briggs, because he's an older guy. He's been through hell. He's had his face, bashed in. He's
Pummeled,
got a
yeah.
concussion, and he's also out in the middle of the dock somewhere. Plus, they kept on driving for a while before this
Mhm.
whole, climactic scene took place. I don't know how he has the wherewithal to A, wake up, B, decide I should go to a doctor instead of, whatever, but then find his way there and,
Mhm.
compose himself for this big showdown. I have to put that aside because the showdown is amazing. It is a
Yeah.
great callback to the bomb. And I love that Holbrook gets his big last moment. He doesn't get interrupted by an explosion in the middle of his speech. He gets in the car and drives away. And as he's driving away, Callahan's just like casually like, "No, I'm just gonna walk and watch this happen."
kind of kind of kind of like Charles Bronson at the end of, Death Wish 3. He just kind of walks.
Yes. Yeah, it just walks away
Kind of
past the
walks away.
flaming car.
But yeah, well, what I liked about this conflict too was that Hal Holbrook's character, um, the lieutenant, Lieutenant Briggs, he doesn't kill Harry. Harry went for his gun again. He doesn't get his gun. He's got to use a bomb secretly, kind of. But Lieutenant Briggs is like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to prosecute you by the own system that you say that you're trying to uphold, even though you may not agree with everything. I'm going to bust you for it. I'm like, wow, that's actually kind of hardcore. It's like this guy's got this figured out. He just didn't figure out the bomb in the back, but still, it was like, and then the car just blows up, and then you get that wonderful 70s film, to where, and that's a wrap, and
Yeah.
there's the credits. It's just
Well,
that's abrupt endings.
also, and this is just my expectation of movies and action
Mhm.
movies, is I thought for sure there was going to be the part where we would cut to the inside of the car and Holbrook, like he's driving, he looks over and sees the bomb, be like, and then it
Yeah.
explodes. But
Mm-mm.
no, it's literally a ticking time bomb. You have no idea at what point it's going to go off, and
Or
it
if
just
it's actually gonna go off. I mean, you leave a little doubt. It's driving away. You're like, wait, maybe he didn't rig the bomb, right? And then boom, you're like, oh no, he did. Yeah,
yeah.
he's Dirty Harry. No, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing with the bomb. He was doing what he was doing with the bomb. Yeah, yeah. I really enjoy this film. I think it holds up quite a bit. to today. One, because of all the practical stuff, but just the way the story and everything plays out. In all honesty, I think a modern version of this might take away from it because, again, pardon our get off the lawn moments tonight, but it's again one of those things to where we got technology, but at the same time, we've got technology because, like the scene with Early, he would have just dialed on his cell phone to Early and warned him and got through. There's a few other parts to where if you had the technology, or if it was set in today's, there were parts where you wouldn't get that tension because you could easily have gone to, whatever internet. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's just it's handled differently, and some of these old school films, like this one, I think holds up. It's still entertaining. It could definitely be watched today. Wild Man Beyond mentions, did you know that there were Dirty Harry pulp novels? And he
I
has
didn't know
one,
that.
and I did not know that, but I may actually read words now. Don't be shocked, and seek one out. I'll have to see. Maybe some of my friends have it. And he also mentions, yeah, and that's a good way. I think we'll wrap it up tonight. Magnum Force is a very underrated sequel. I think it gets buried with the rest of the Dirty Harry franchise. But if you look in the early sequels, because as used to we are now about it, and you've heard me say this before, folks, but sequels weren't a given. In fact, there's a reason why this isn't called Dirty Harry 2 or whatnot. It's similar to Bond, to where they took these characters usually, and if it was successful enough, they put them in another story, but it's not necessarily a direct sequel. They don't always reference, hey, look at the reference from the first one at all. It's just that same character in a different story. And like the pulp novel that Wildman mentioned, and that's what Magnum Force is. And yeah, in some ways, I think this film is actually better than the first one.
Yeah, I mean that's it is. They do kind of a callback in the opening credits, which are very weird because it's literally just Harry holding the
And the
gun. It's like a
gun.
close up of his arm against a really red backdrop.
Mhm.
And it's not a still. It's actually, for the
So
3 minutes or whatever the credits are playing, that you can see the gun like subtle movements and everything. And it does this really awkward turn where like the wrist is like bending, like no one would hold a gun like that, but they just want to point it at the screen and do like a pseudo James Bond thing.
yeah.
I was really afraid during that opening. I'm like, what the
You're like,
hell
oh
am I in
no.
for? But the rest of the movie was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, that's a good question. Wildman asked, how do you think this movie and Dirty Harry franchise is relevant today with what is going on with police today? Um,
I don't know if I want to touch that one.
that is a powder keg of a question.
Especially for the end of the show. We
Especially
could
for the
we
end
could
of the
talk for 3
show.
hours about that.
We could. I will say maybe not necessarily all the Dirty Harry films, but I would say this one could still be held relevant in a number of ways to today in many respects, as far as the people having no confidence in the police, thinking that they're not doing their jobs properly in a slightly different way in this film, but still in that respects. I think there's a number of subjects here. I mean, we touched on them a little bit earlier today, and I don't want to get too heavy, that I think could still apply today. Unfortunately, it's true. I mean, the vigilante cops, while it's an extreme, you look at what their philosophy is, and we've heard in real life from select cases that some police law enforcement folks feel similar to those four guys who are in this film. A little bit more, they're looking more for the bad guys versus some of today's, but and then RoboCop is kind of relevant too.
Oh yeah.
RoboCop is definitely relevant, especially in the idea of the private corporation, the politicalization and corporatization of police and law enforcement and security forces, definitely.
And I will
Um,
say this, people crap all over the RoboCop remake because why would you remake RoboCop? I think the reason is to underscore some of the elements that were relevant in '87 and have
Mhm.
become more relevant in 2013 or 14, whenever that movie was made. I think it succeeded.
Mhm.
Not as good as the original, but I think it
Well,
works in large part because of Michael Keaton,
well, yeah.
which we were talking about before the main show.
Yeah, Michael, yeah, definitely a Michael Keaton, but how you're not going to replicate Verhoeven's satire. Sorry,
Well, it's because it's a different, yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the problems. It's a different kind of movie.
yeah,
It's
it's
played more as a straight, like, what if there was a guy who became a part cop, part robot?
yeah.
Yeah.
And Hazuki's Revenge says in Brazil, the Magnum Force is called Magnum 44, which I mean, okay, I guess they couldn't call it Magnum Force. Magnum 44. I'm not sure how that rolls off.
That would just be too confusing because 'cause be
That
like,
would
"Where's
be.
parts 1 through 43?"
And
Anyway.
if RoboCop is science fiction, Astro gets pissed off. And finally, our final comment, and we all know that Death Wish is way too relevant now than back then. Yes, and we'll leave it there for Death Wish, which we also did the entire Death Wish franchise a couple months ago on our podcast here because
Not the
it's
entire franchise, Mark. We
no.
didn't cover the remake.
Okay, we didn't cover the remake. We covered the Bronson films. Okay, let's put it that way. But thank you for great comments and tidbits tonight, Wild Man.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hazuki's Revenge. Thank you to Don Shanahan for showing up and adding a little flavor to the conversation.
I know what that flavor is, and he can have it.
I guess
Um
I chose the wrong words for that. I really did. This is what happens when my brain is broken. But anyway, I want to thank everyone who tuned in. And now, as always, I give the floor to my guest for his license to shill. So please, Mr. Simmons, shill away.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which is just the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. Do a number of like interviews and movie reviews and live streams and stuff. Kind of slow this week because I'm catching up on a whole bunch of things. But next Monday, a week from yesterday, we'll be doing a live stream roundtable review of The Eternals with Earth's mightiest critics. And hopefully, Mark, I don't know if you can join us, but we'd love to
I
have you
might.
on.
I
Okay.
might be able to join you. Depends on if I get an interview at that time, but I'm definitely going to try to make it. I'm going to definitely see Eternals this weekend when it comes out. There'll be a Movie Man's Movie Minute for that.
The king of TikTok is who I'm talking to right now.
The king of TikTok. I am not the king of TikTok, but yes, it is full force month. Next week will be our cannon fodder episode with Delta Force. So that's what we're going to talk about next week, folks. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. We're going to have not only hopefully Mr. Ian Simmons back with us, but we will also have tentatively Mr. Michael Veers back with us, and Angelique, I believe,
Cool.
signed up for that one as well. So that should be a lot of fun. And a Ghostbusters Afterlife, we may do that. Or we might do that for a VIP for our Patreon. We'll have to see, but good suggestion, Wild Man. Thank you, everybody. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. You got to ask yourself one question. Did he fire 5 shots or